Welcome to the Running for Real podcast, where each week we bring you a conversation designed to help you create positive change in your life, community, and planet. It's a collective of conversations about running, the climate emergency, and social justice. Running for Real is for the brave, for those with courage and vulnerability. United by our love of running, we're driving momentum towards some of the really tough challenges we're facing as humanity. So come join me, Tina Muir, and let's get started. Hello, my friends. Welcome to episode 268 of the Running for Real podcast. Thank you for joining me today. I'm excited you are here. If this is your first time listening, welcome. We are glad to have you. And if this is 268, I'm just blown away by your commitment and loyalty. Thank you very much. And I'm also loving hearing about the Together Run feedback that many of you have been giving me and how much you're enjoying those and how you're passing them on with other people, and those friends and family are really finding them helpful. There's many people who haven't run in years and have been trying out runs for the first time in a long time with Together Runs. And it's just so cool. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, a Together Run is literally where I take my phone with a microphone, a little small handheld microphone plug to it, and I go on a run. We do a body scan, we do a senses check-in. It's very meditative at the beginning, very a way to connect with our body. And then we have a conversation. I talk as if you are there. I will ask you questions, give you things to think about. I will have you connect in with nature. I will teach you how to do some strides, which we do together in the run. And it just is as close as you could possibly get to running with another person. And so many people are enjoying it. You can go to runningforreal.com to go check out more if you haven't already. Now, today, I'm excited to tell you about our guest today. Today, we are fortunate enough with a special treat of having Ryan Holiday on the show. Now, you may recognize Ryan's name. He is a best-selling author, and some of his most popular books include The Obstacle is the Way, Ego is the Enemy, and Stillness is the Key. Those are some of his big ones. He also has a very popular podcast and newsletter. He has his own bookstore in Bastrop in Texas. And there's just so much more to him. Now, we're really lucky that we had him on the show today. He's also a big fan of running. And so we got to dive deep into how his work coincides with running and how he has worked through this tough time, about his new book, Courage is Calling, Fortune Favors the Brave. It's just a great conversation, and he is someone who's very thoughtful, and I think you as the audience are really going to enjoy learning from him. So without any further ado, let's hear from one of our sponsors, and we'll be right to this episode with Ryan Holiday. Thank you to Tracksmith for sponsoring this episode of the Running for Real podcast. Boston Marathon, my first race I am doing of the year, well, not of the year, of this season, I should say, is just 10 days away, and I am very excited to go be a guide and just get to be out there and on the race course. It's going to be really fun to do. And I will be wearing Tracksmith from head to toe because I am a huge fan, in case that wasn't already obvious. And I am loving the fact that their fall clothes are now out. The styles are beautiful, as are the colors. And friends, I have told you, and this is the final time I'm going to be telling you, the $15 off $75 off coupon is going to be disappearing very soon. We are going to switch it to a giving code very soon. So you are going to be able to only get it for another few more days. So make sure you go to tracksmith.com and use code TINA15 to get $15 off your order, $75 or more. They have lots of new colors in all the old favorite styles. I love the Harrier long sleeve, the Brighton base tank I've told you about many times. It is so cool that we're getting into fall season where we can go out and wear those long sleeves, but also there are quite a few different t-shirts and tanks for those if you are running later in the day or if you are racing. I will be racing Boston in the Boston singlet that they have out now, along with some of their shorts and the socks and everything. I will be in Tracksmith from head to toe. So be sure you can go check out all the different things that they have going on, but be quick because they tend to sell out. Tracksmith is very popular and you will see why. They have wonderful quality, wonderful products, and just check out the website in general. It is a great place to explore. There's a journal, a logbook, there's films, there's stories, there's events. There's just all kinds of fun things going on there, and you will learn from just being on the website. So go to tracksmith.com and use code TINA15 to get yourself $15 off your order of $75 or more. Don't wait. This is one of the last few days you'll be able to use this code. So thank you again to Tracksmith for sponsoring this episode. Ryan, thank you so much for joining me today on the Running For Real podcast. I'm excited you are here.
I am too.
Is this your first official running podcast?
I think so. I actually do think so. I'm supposed to do the morning shakeout, but yours is first.
Oh, I'm gonna have to tell Mario.
Sorry to plug another podcast at the beginning of yours. That's very bad form.
No, it's actually not. Mario's a friend, and we do plug one another's shows. And I actually knew he told me that was on the agenda. Okay, so best-selling author, The Obstacle is the Way, Ego is the Enemy, Stillness is the Key, and the Daily Stoic have sold more than 4 million copies. But more importantly than any of those, you are a runner. And we almost managed a run a few months ago, but yes. some people in I shouldn't say it like that. I should say that a major rise in COVID rates made us both spook a little bit, and it was probably the best idea. It just happened to be when I was in Austin, the numbers are really high. So we'll put a pin in that for a later time. But I'd love to know for you, as Austin was a really cool place to run, and I know you don't live exactly in Austin, where is a place that you've always wanted to run that haven't managed yet?
I actually do think you're right, though. Austin is a very underrated running city. Mm-hmm. So I lived in Austin for a number of years. So I used to run on the Town Lake Trail, which is like, as you know, it's sort of a 10-mile crushed gravel path. So on the water. And now there's a boardwalk. You used to have to go up sort of on the highway. So I really like that track. I live out in the country near Bastrop. And so we have a thing called the Bastrop State Park, which is where I wanted to run with you. But are you asking where I haven't run in Austin or where I haven't run in the world?
No, in general. Where would be a cool place that you would like to go that haven't yet?
Well, I want to do the marathon that Murakami talks about, and what I talk about when I talk about running, the one from Marathon to Athens, or you know the famous one where the
153-mile one.
No, I thought there's like a 26-mile one, but okay, sure, okay. I want to do that. I would like to do that.
Wait, so how does that work? When I read somewhere that you have no interest in running a marathon as it misses the point. This one doesn't miss the point? So
I do no races of any kind, right? Okay. So mm-hmm. I like, if you told me, hey, do you want to go running? And then we ran 26 miles, I'd be super into it. What I'm not doing is training for any marathons.
Okay.
To me, it's not that it misses the point for everyone, but to me, I feel like I'm competitive enough. I don't need any additional competition in my life. So for me, running the marathon is the day-to-dayness of it, doing it for no reason other than that I like doing it and that it's good for my health, mental and physical. So I think I was more talking to non-runners than to runners, because when people hear that you run, they invariably ask, are you training for something? And to me, the answer is life is the marathon.
Yes, no, that's so true. And I'm definitely want to dig into that a little bit more, because I'm glad you mentioned it already, because I was going to say that when I said about misses the point, 50% of people would have been like, I'm out. Like, what do you mean? What do you mean? Not that misses the point, but you explained it already. And so you would just pick that true marathon just any day that there is not a race, which I would imagine there's at least one day a year where they have a race there. So we just have to make sure you don't do it on that day.
I have accidentally several times in my life gone on runs and then ended up in a race, which is always fun and weird.
You're lucky no one caught you, because you would have been yelled at and told to get out. And
I actually got in trouble. I was running in LA last week, and I accidentally ran. I was running with my kids down in Venice, and I sort of ran through a farmer's market that was being set up, and this guy tried to stop me from running on. And he said, the farmer's market's not open. And I said, yeah, I'm not here for the farmer's market. I'm running on the road. And he said, well, the road's closed. And I was like, yes, to cars. And so it was this whole thing where he was like trying to block me. And then I had my kids in the stroller and I was trying to get away. It was very comical, but I do accidentally end up in some places from time to time, but and I've done the distance of a marathon. I've just never done an actual marathon race.
You just reminded me that once when I was in Kansas, I can't even remember where, some random place in Kansas, this guy was waving at me and he was like, the cows are crossing the street. And I was like, I'm not stopping my run. I was like middle of my elite career. Like I do not stop my running. And he was like, no, you got to stop. And he was like driving alongside me. The cows are crossing. The cows are crossing. And I was like, so I'll go in between the cows. And we ended up like arguing while I was running along this street. I completely forgot that happened.
People do. Yeah, people do that. I think they think that they're helping, they're like giving you information, and they don't, one, understand what they're interrupting, and they, two, don't understand that you've been doing this a long time. Like you're not just sort of walking around in the, like I remember I was running in New York City and this construction worker grabbed me to stop me from running. He was like, this is a construction site or something. And I was like, this is a city street. And I'd already be gone, but you're now touching me, which I would prefer that you not be doing, to tell me that it's not a safe area. So I think my attitude as a runner is like, I'm traveling through, like I don't want to stop and talk. We don't need to have a conversation. None of the rules apply. And let me be on my way.
That's so true. And yet I also know some runners who just want to talk to everyone and anyone. And so I love thinking about across the spectrum with some people went the other way. Now, you ran in high school and middle school. I still get a bit confused with the schooling over here, but 2 years of middle school, right? And 4 years of high school.
I ran in elementary school too, although it was less. I've basically been running since I was like 7 or 8, I guess.
And you said that you don't race, but back then
so I did. I did.
Yeah, so you did, but you at least I read you didn't really take it seriously. So is there never
I didn't
that
take
part
it seriously.
Of you that wonders?
That if I could have been good.
Well, yeah. Like, what if I would have taken it seriously when I was a high schooler?
Oh, I wonder about that all the time. I think in a way I'm grateful that it happened because I had a lot of potential. I was sort of naturally fast, and obviously I'm dedicated and I like it. And I think part of the reason I didn't take it seriously is that I was afraid of taking anything seriously and then not being good. So it was sort of a moment of it was a formative moment in the sort of costs of dicking around and not taking things seriously. And I'm sure I was awful to coach and not fun for my coaches who in retrospect were all, volunteers, and I was probably making their lives miserable. So I think I was just happy being good enough. And then my parents were making me do it. So interesting. That was why I was there.
So what do your parents say now about the fact that you run?
My parents and I have an odd relationship. We never sort of really meshed as far as priorities or language or communication. So we're just always not really in sync on all these things. So I think my dad would have rather I play a sport that he cared about, like football or something. And then basically they made me do a sport and I picked running because running was, I was at least marginally good at, but then I don't know. I just never took it seriously. And I feel like it was a missed opportunity. I do wish a coach had called me out on it. I mean, sure they thought they did call me out on it, but they were getting mad at the behavior instead of thinking like, why is this talented person not taking it seriously? And so nobody ever managed to break through. And it wasn't until after I left high school and now no one was making me do anything that I really discovered that I actually just love doing it for me.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's so interesting. And I love thinking about, you've got 2 boys, I've got 2 girls. I do like thinking about how it will be different to see. They're obviously going to have the whole own host of issues from the way we're raising them now. But thinking about the fact that we can talk about things, and we can ask, like you said, what happened to you, or what is making kids act out in this way, rather than just assuming it's just the way they are, or that they're being little buggers or whatever. Like, I am interested with our kids growing up, like how that changes things.
No, totally. And I feel like, the irony is that the yelling or the punishment only hardened the attitude, right? Because it was like, I didn't actually like it. And then to feel like I was being picked on, or that it made it less fun, right? And so sometimes the thing you try to do to reach someone has the exact opposite effect that you think it does. And so I certainly am thinking about that with my own kids. I mean, I would love for them to run. And right now, I like that they let me run with them. But my oldest is 5, so we're getting close to the point where that probably won't happen anymore. And certainly the stroller is getting heavier and heavier each day.
Yeah, I don't know how you do the double stroller. The single is enough for me. That is interesting, and it's hard as a runner not to hope that your kids become runners. But I'm struggling very much with the same thing, that I want them to be excited only if they want to be excited, and otherwise we will see. I want to bring up something that I came across reading about you from 2007. And you talked about a runner trying to race you as you passed him. And you said, and I quote, "Like an asshole, he sped up." Now, as a female who is an elite runner, I have had that experience many, many times. And I know how annoying it is. But as it's been 15 years, do you still think that same guy is an asshole, or have you mellowed?
It's funny. I think that's probably the first thing I ever published
Really?
On the internet. So I remember I was in college and I would run usually at night. There was a track on campus. And I think what I was referring to, if I remember correctly, is like I was running and then someone else, we sort of crossed paths, and now all of a sudden we're racing for no reason.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember thinking, he has no idea how long I've been here. Like, he has no idea how long I ran to get here. Why are we in this pointless competition with each other to prove nothing to nobody? So I don't know if I would call him an asshole, but I do think the metaphor stands, which is that in life, we're all running our own races. And one of the things I love about running is that you're primarily doing battle with yourself and your own desire to basically not be running. And so the idea that, to me, it takes actually a lot of discipline to, come alongside someone in what is not actual competition and just let them do what they're doing and just do what you're doing. And so I've always thought that. And it wasn't until a couple years later, though, that I came across a passage in Seneca where Seneca talks about, he uses this word euthymia, which basically he defines as tranquility. But he's saying his definition is that it's when you have the sense of the path that you're on and you're not distracted by the paths that crisscross yours. He says, even those from people who are hopelessly lost. And to me, that's what that's about, is like, just because someone else is there, just because someone comes up behind you, just because someone is 20 paces in front of you, to be able to tune that out and just focus on what you are trying to do, to me is the key part of the discipline of running.
That's such a good point. It's funny, yesterday I was on my long run, which I did 3.5 hours preparing for some races this fall. And a guy ran past me and in front of me, and he turned around and he's like, "You're doing great." And at first I was like, like starting to be like, "I'll show you, I'm doing great. I've been out here for 20 miles already." But then I was like, you know what? He probably is just trying to pay you a compliment. Like, let it go, like, let him do his thing. And so thankfully I managed to pull myself back. But the old me would have been like, right, you want to get into it? Let's do it.
Well, I'm sure with men, it's like a competition thing. And then I'm sure with women, you get a lot of condescending, like sort of "great job, honey" kind of crap that would be particularly annoying.
Yes, exactly.
So I can imagine. Yeah.
Okay. So then you said that you used to do a lot of your running in the evenings, but you still do your running in the afternoon, right?
Yeah, my routine fluctuates a little bit. My favorite time to run would be in the afternoon, right after I've sort of finished writing and work for the day. It's been harder to do that with as I'm sort of writing a lot now, and I found on the last book and a half or so, particularly during COVID, the routine's been a little different. So it's hard for me to come home from the office, get the kids all riled up that I'm home, and then be like, bye.
Yeah.
So I've actually been running and walking in the morning. So like this morning I walked for about a mile with the kids in the stroller, and then I ran for 4 miles. So I've been doing it in the morning lately. I'll probably switch back to the afternoons when the weather cools down.
Mm-hmm.
But I've done all the spectrum, from early mornings to late at night to middle of the afternoon to like on lunch breaks or whatever. I've done all of I've tried it at all the different times. For me, I'm less wedded to when it happens and more that it does happen. Like when I travel, I definitely do it in the mornings. When I'm at home, sometimes I do it in the evenings. But for me, it's less when and more like sort of that.
Yeah. Well, firstly, I'm glad you addressed the walking with the stroller, because I'd always wondered how you had managed to get your kids to walk a mile. They
don't walk. No,
that makes more sense. I was like, wow, how does he get two young boys to do that? Okay, I would say you've come back down to a normal human level, because I just could not understand how you managed that. Strapped in the stroller makes more sense. That said, you just said there it's about getting the running done. Yes. So how have you made sure that you've always had time for running when you've got young kids? Your career has been exploding. It'd be very easy to skip, say, this is not the time to run. How do you do that? But then also, how do you know when to say no if you do have to skip a run, if you are overtired or, when your body is at its limit?
The latter part is much harder for me, for sure. I mean, I've always just thought of running as part of my job. Like I have ideas while I run. It's important to me that I stay in shape so I can have the endurance and the sort of willpower to do what I do. So I've always thought of running, and I do the same thing with reading. People say, like, how do you make time to read? And I go, well, if I don't read, I can't write. So I make time for it. And I kind of just see the same thing with running. So I don't think about it as like, oh, something I put in, on the side as a hobby, or, I do it when I have leftover time. I make time for it. Mm-hmm. But like yesterday, so I was just on this, I had to go to LA and Northern California. I had to do some stuff. And so we drove. It was I won't get into it, but it was sort of an epic trip. And I ran every day of the trip except the last day. When we woke up, the kids were crazy. The place we were staying, it was not conducive to running or walking. And I knew that coming back, like this week is going to be like a complete sprint for me. There's just like a million things I have to do. And I'd already sort of pushed my body really hard the last couple weeks. I was like, I am not going to run today. And that actually required more discipline than like somehow forcing it in. Like it's easier for me to run than to not run.
I heard you talk I heard you talk with Malcolm Gladwell about this, and how he said he doesn't have a problem taking a day. What did he say? Takes every third day off. And he
I
said
could never
he doesn't
do that.
Yeah, but why is that? Like,
I don't know. I'm more of a habit person, and like once I start something, I start doing it, and once I quit something, I like never do that thing again. So like I remember, like, I was actually just talking to my wife about this a couple of days ago. Like it struck me the other day that coming up in December will be 10 years since I drank soda. And I don't remember exactly why I quit soda, but I was like, it wasn't work. It was having some negative side effect. And I was like, I'm going to stop doing this. And then once I decided to stop doing it, and the habit, made a week or two, I was like, well, now this is like a streak that I'm on, and I don't want to end the streak. So I think I'm very sort of streak focused. And that's one of the blessings / curses of like the Apple Watch, is that it's sort of like, there's like the goals you're supposed to hit every day, and then it links them together. And it's actually like quite hard for me to, even though no one sees it, even though you don't win anything, it's very hard for me to not continue that. So it's kind of a compulsion.
Yeah. Well, that's why I was curious. Like, I actually don't wear my Apple Watch is just sitting on the side because I couldn't stand it just always being that plugged in.
Yeah.
But do you think that's something that you need to work on, that maybe age, because I think you're the same age as me. Are you 33, 34? Yeah. Yeah. Like, will you be 60 and be like, oh, that was so funny that I couldn't take a day off? Like, do you feel that you need to work on that, or do you feel that's part of your strength?
No, I mean, I think it's both. I think it's part of my strength. Like, as a writer, like the way you write books is by showing up every day and writing a little bit. And that adds up cumulatively to books. And that's certainly how I, on a consistent basis, have published what I've been able to publish. I don't sort of do it in like, again, oh, I'm training for this, or, from May to October, that's when I'm writing. I'm just writing all the time. I'm always doing it. And so I prefer that sort of always on, never having an off season kind of a methodology. It just works better for me. And like, I actually feel it when I don't do it. I think with running, I have tried to be more balanced, and I've tried to, I don't want to be someone who, like, at 60, my knees give out and then I don't have a choice. So I do try to think about, not pushing myself super hard all the time, trying to balance out with exercise. So I don't necessarily run every day, but I want to do some form of strenuous exercise every day, whether that's running, swimming, or biking. So I usually do one of the three, but prefer running. So I don't know. I mean, the Stoics would say that anything you do out of compulsion is not good. Yeah. I kind of see it as, of all the things to be compulsive about, this is probably one of the least bad.
Thank you to UCAN for sponsoring this episode of the Running for Real podcast. I have been working with UCAN since 2013, and I could not imagine going back. I am a huge fan of what this company is doing, and also the products that they have created. Now, if you've been a listener of this show for a long time, that I am a big fan of their signature UCAN Energy Powder, and I like it in the Cran Raz flavor. It's powered by Superstarch. It's going to fuel your athletic performance with sustained energy and a stable blood sugar. That means there's no spikes, no crashes. You're going to maintain those blood sugar levels. You're going to eliminate the heart racing highs and those crashing lows in your races. It is trusted by many of the pros that you know and love, many of those athletes that you follow. And one serving is going to provide a steady energy for you for an intense 1 to 2 hour workout. Now, Superstarch is this proprietary key ingredient. It's low glycemic, complex carbohydrate made by a patented cooking method applied to a specific strain of non-GMO corn. It's real food. It's naturally prepared, one-of-a-kind carbohydrate that is a key to unlocking your potential. I've been using this since 2013 and a massive fan of it. They now have a gel version. So if you have been asking for that, your wish has come true. And you can go to ucan.co/Tina to get yourself 20% off. And you can check out more about what is going on, what products they have there. And you can also get yourself some bars. May I recommend, now it is finally cooling down again, the chocolate peanut butter bars. They are so good. I could eat them all day, every day. They are delicious. But I use every single one of the products on the UCAN website. They are wonderful. Go to ucan.co/Tina to go check it out.
The Stoics would say that anything you do out of compulsion is not good. Yeah. I kind of see it as, of all the things to be compulsive about, this is probably one of the least bad.
Yeah, that's a very fair point. Related to that, I'd love to talk for a minute about burnout. A lot of Americans and people around the world have burnout, and you wrote an article about the definition of success is autonomy, and not having autonomy is related to burnout. So how does your running help with that?
Well, to me, running is the opposite of what I do professionally. And that's why I think it works well with writing. And I think that's why a lot of runners or a lot of writers are runners. So it's like you're sitting, it's cerebral, you're by yourself, usually like inside, writing, and then running, you're outside, there's people or nature, and you're primarily pushing yourself physically. So I like it that it's like, I just did this thing and now I'm going to go do this opposite of the thing. And usually alternating between the two seems to be generative for ideas. But I think having an outlet is really important for burnout. In my Stillness book, I talk about hobbies. To me, like running is probably my main hobby.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that to me contributes to burnout is like working and working and working and not feeling like you're making progress, like not feeling like it's having an impact, not feeling like there's an end in sight, not feeling like you're progressing, not getting any sort of validation or win out of it. And what I love about running is that it's self-contained and totally in your control. So it's like you decide to run for 4 miles, you go run for 4 miles, and then you come home and like, that's a win. And so what I love about running is that it's like an easy win every day. Even the hard days are still easy compared to the rest of the world, which is so much more, uncontrollable. And so I think having something that gets you a win every day that's rewarding is really, really important, especially in something that can be as sort of, as much of a drag as writing can be.
Well, I guess, or you could say, or running can be sometimes.
Yeah.
When you talk about running in Texas in the summer, I can't imagine that's that enjoyable.
Although I grew up in Sacramento and then I went to school in Riverside, California. So like I'm just fully immune to I could run like on the surface of the sun and not be bothered by it.
That's fair. Okay. All right. Well, that answers another thing I was going to say about, you said about ideas coming to you, and I'd love to hear your take on this. So when I interviewed Malcolm, I asked him about ideas coming to him, and he said he runs in the afternoon. He lives in upstate New York, so not quite as hot as where you are, which is pretty brutal in the summer, but you've taken that away, that you don't mind it at this point. But he said he never has ideas come to him on runs, but you said you do, and I definitely do. But what do you do when you say ideas come to you? Is it things you want to write about? Is it like problems that you're trying to solve? Is it all of the above? And what do you do when they come to you? Like, do you literally have a pen and paper? Like, I'd love to hear.
Yeah, usually like my wife knows like when I come in from a run, like not to say anything until I've like said something back. Yeah, because I'm usually rushing in to write a few things down. Every once in a while I have something that's I'm so nervous about losing, I'll stop and maybe type it on my phone or something. But usually I'll just be running and something will unlock. Like either it'll be a way to start a chapter, or it'll be like a way to arrange things in the chapter I was already working on. It'll be just one short sentence. It could just be a word. But usually just stuff comes. And then the majority of the run, if it's more than one thing, is like periodically checking in to make sure that I remember that thing and repeating it back to myself. So I don't lose it by the time I get home. And I've definitely lost a lot of stuff, and some of it haunts me. Actually, just the other day, I'm working on a chapter about economy, like sort of the right amount of stuff, like not too little, not too much, what to take away, what to leave. And I was on a walk, and how I wanted to say that, like the whole thing, just like the whole chapter just appeared. And I don't know what happened, but I lost it. And now it's like, I'm thinking about it constantly, like what could it possibly been? And I'm hoping it'll come back. Maybe it will, maybe it won't, but I don't have like a great system. To me, it's more just like you get this gift, you try not to forget it, and you try to write it down as soon as you can.
That's probably the better way of doing it though, right? Because if you did have a system that you would use, you would either constantly be stopping, or it'd be like, when, I don't know if you would have ever done this, but probably not, but trying to think about getting a running photo, all you're looking at. And sometimes, when I'm trying to get a picture for social media, I spend that whole time looking for where should I put my phone, and it just takes away the whole run, because now all you're doing, and I'd imagine it's the same thing with writing things down, you'd be like, oh, this is a good idea, I'm going to stop for this. Oh, this is a good idea, I'm going to stop for this. So yeah, I think that's probably the best way of doing it, even if it means you sometimes lose things. But yes.
Yeah, I take the phone with me mostly at this point for like emergencies, especially when I have the kids. So like, or directions, like if I've never been to the place where I'm going. But I try to forget that the phone is there. And I totally know what you mean. It's either you're trying to take, that's kind of why I stopped using Strava, is I was thinking too much of the photo or like the time or whatever. And then now, sometimes I do lots of videos for Daily Stoic, I'll take like a GoPro with me, and because like I'm trying to document it, as you said, suddenly you're not only not focused on the run, but then you're like, oh, I got to put this here, and then I have to go do a loop. You're like, you're actually ruining the run to get better photos of it, and that feels like, I don't know, it feels like sacrilegious or something to me. It feels disrespectful.
No, I feel the same way. I've now implemented a rule on myself, especially within long runs, that I can't do anything for the first 2 hours. And then by that time, the energy that it takes to get my phone out is not really worth it. So,
well, I don't do runs quite that long, but I do like that rule.
I wasn't saying you had to do that to not take photos out, but it's that was something I kept doing when I was in the trails, and I was like, you've got to stop this. Like, you're in this beauty, you've got to enjoy it. And I would love to ask you about running. How does running weave in between your personal, professional, and community life? How are they separate, and how are they together?
Well, so I live out in the country, and we actually live on this, it's like sort of a private road that all the neighbors share. And it's about a mile and a half from my house to like where the mailboxes are. So most of my running when I'm at home is on that trail. And actually one of the reasons I stopped using Strava and stuff too is that I like sort of don't like saying where I live. Like, so I found that it was like sort of making things not private. But so this road that I was thinking about it during the pandemic. I've done like, several thousand miles on this trail just in the pandemic alone. Since I've lived there, I couldn't even calculate, but, it's a weird part of like, okay, personal, it's like time with my kids, especially the walk in the morning, or this morning it was a run and a walk, but it's like, it's time with my kids. It was time in nature. We saw some deer this morning. We were talking. It's also like when I see my neighbors, right? Like I know who goes to work at what time. I know what other neighbors are walking or running on the road. I notice when someone who probably shouldn't be on the road is on the road. I notice when people have dumped trash, or like this morning, overnight, someone had clearly dumped some old tires. So it's weirdly kind of like personal, community, and then professional. I'm also just getting all these ideas too. So like when you asked about making time for it, weirdly, like, it's like I have to make time for everything else. This is like a huge part of the professional, personal community life. Like it's one of my sort of contributions to all of those things.
I love the way of looking at things like that. And have you always seen it that way?
I don't think so, but I mean, I do think runners don't get enough credit for sort of being out in the community, like using the stuff, right? Like they're sort of eyes and ears out in the world. They're like noticing when things, I mean, the people that I've noticed people who have fallen over and need help. I've seen car accidents, I've like you see stuff, right? So I actually think running, and biking too, but anything that gets you out sort of in the community and in the world, to me is like really important and should be celebrated.
So true. I mean, the amount of stories that you read, like you said, about someone getting hurt or an accident, and it says, a runner stopped to assist. I mean, I too have also been at many of those as well. And you're right, very pivotal points of the people in the community that maybe we don't think about enough. So thanks for bringing that up, because that is important. I'd love to go into Courage is Calling, Fortune Favors the Brave, your new book, for a minute. And I'm going to dive in quite deep for a minute here.
Okay.
Now, your book is inspiring, encouraging people to look fear in the eye, go for the thing that's scary anyway, be courageous, do what you know you need to do in your heart, even if it's going to bring judgment and criticism from others. Now, I'd love to know, for women, that's going to require a few extra steps, as we've been hardwired to put others first, be good girls, and men are often celebrated when they put what they believe is right. There's loads of war analogies, war heroes, things like that. Now, I myself speak up quite a lot, and I've been very vocal about things, particularly climate change for me, but it's still really scary, which I'm not saying it isn't for you or anyone else, but I think a lot of women might be listening to this, or, well, we've been talking about running, so maybe not so much, but would read the book and think, there's too much against them and a man might not understand. So I would love to hear, is courage different across different identities, and how do you address those definitions within the work that you're doing?
It's funny, actually, the Stoics are one of the first philosophical schools in the ancient world to say that virtue was universal, that like both men and women should be taught philosophy, because courage was courage, temperance was temperance, justice was justice, wisdom was wisdom. But I agree in that given sort of gender roles, assumptions about gender, sort of the different obligations or responsibilities that different people have, courage can manifest itself differently. So I would totally concede everything that you're saying, that sort of women are expected to do certain things, and that courage can manifest itself there differently. But I would perhaps add to that it cuts the other direction too. That so courage for a man isn't necessarily running into a burning building or fighting on the battlefield. It could also be asking for help, or being not afraid to live in a, let's say, less conventional way, or to assume a different role. So to me, courage is like when you put yourself out there, when you do what needs to be done, despite the fact that it's scary or hard or risky. And that's what the book is a celebration of and a call to. It's not, a book solely about, let's say, physical courage, or professional courage, but also about personal courage, about, sort of courage to do what's right, courage to be oneself. Actually, I tell a story in the book about Margaret Thatcher, who I realize is a polarizing figure, but that's sort of the point. And I'm not talking about her politics. I'm talking about what it would take to have been a female politician at that time. Yeah. And she tells this story about being interviewed for like her first job right out of college. She was a chemist. And she notices as she's being interviewed, it's like the fourth interview, they put you through the whole sort of song and dance. And she can see upside down that the interviewer has written, this woman has far too much personality to work here. And I love that, because it was true. She did have too much personality to work there. But she was courageous enough not to become what she needed to be to work there. Do you know what I mean? Like the courage to be oneself, to be difficult, to be unusual, to transgress norms or expectations. This is, this is just as scary and just as important in the long run as any form of physical courage might be.
So true. Thank you. And then related to that, a lot of, you use the example of Margaret. You talked about Florence Nightingale quite a bit within the book. But the reality is a lot of the ancient Stoics were men, and a lot of the stories that are highlighted are about men because that's what's been recorded. So how can we find more women's Stoic examples in the modern day if the ancient versions or ancient stories aren't recorded?
Yeah, I talk about that in my book, Lives of the Stoics, because it was really important. I wanted to have at least one female Stoic. And this is a book entirely about Stoics in the ancient world. Mm-hmm. And so it's a problem, of course, that, men sort of exclusively were allowed to hold public positions. And so sort of how do you write about people that were not recorded by history? And that's sort of what I leaned into. There's a great observation from the biographer Robert Caro. He was talking about gunfighters in the Old West. He was sort of really studying like what it was like to live like in Texas in the 1800s, right? And he was saying, and actually his wife, who's his collaborator and researcher, is the one who sort of points this out to him, as it often goes. But he writes, you hear a lot about gunfighters in the Old West, but he says you don't hear a lot about the woman carrying water from the well after a perineal tear. And that really struck me in regards to Stoicism, because, you hear about Marcus Aurelius, or you hear about Seneca, or you hear about Epictetus, but you don't hear about their mothers or their wives or the people that they would have encountered in the street. And we know that there were women who studied Stoicism. So the fact that they were Stoic without the benefit of the respect or the attention or the recognition, to me almost makes it more impressive, almost closer to what the philosophy is supposed to be about, like doing the right thing because it's the right thing, even if you exist in an unjust world, even if the system is rigged, even if it's unfair. Mm-hmm. And so it requires a certain amount of recognition to go like, hey, the people that I've heard about are actually not even the true practitioners of the ideas.
Yeah. Wow.
We're not even the best. Like they're not the ultimate examples. The ultimate examples are the people that you haven't heard of.
So then if Stoicism is applicable to everyone and what you've just said there, how can we help it to reach everyone and use examples from all over the world without them being, recorded or written? Like we're doing with similar things in the running world right now. We're facing these issues of how do we share lesser known, powerful stories because they exist, but how do we bring them to the center stage? And how are you doing that within you being a messenger of Stoicism, I suppose?
It's just something I feel like you have to work on. I'm one of my mentors, the writer Robert Greene. He made a really good point to me early on as I started as his research assistant. And he's like, look, diversity is not just like the right thing to do morally, like when you're telling stories in a book. But he's like, the more diverse it is, the more other people will be able to relate to what you're talking about, because they'll see yourself in the pages. So like I'm fairly certain, because I work consciously on it, like my books have gotten more diverse as I've written them, as far as like the balance between men and women. And then I feel like I've been more diverse as far as race and gender and race and ethnicity goes, as sexual orientation goes. What I'm working on now, because I've heard about it from a number of readers as my books have been translated internationally, is like, how do I make the books less American, right? So it's like, I'm fascinated by the Civil War. I'm fascinated by American politics. I'm obviously fascinated by American sports. And so it becomes really easy. That's just the language that I speak. So when I'm sitting down to write a chapter and I'm like, well, who do I want this example to be? Instinctually, I'm going to pick something that I'm familiar with, that that I know. And so it takes extra work to stop and go, well, that person works, but I'm going to do the work. Instead of settling, I now have to put this person aside and go find someone different, who's either more inclusive or more interesting, or allows, a different reader to see something, to be familiar with what's happening.
Thank you to Inside Tracker for sponsoring this episode of the Running For Real podcast. My friends, I have something to tell you. I need to get tested again. It always makes me stressed because I really don't like needles. They stress me out. Even though I have had, countless needles over my lifetime. But even with Inside Tracker, I've had probably 10 plus assessments. I've been tested over 10 times. It doesn't seem to get any easier, but yet I still do it. And it is still worth it, even with a needle phobia. It is amazing to know what is going on the inside. And Inside Tracker is going to be this comprehensive way of checking out what is going on the inside. I mean, the name makes sense, right? It was founded by leading scientists in aging, genetics, and biometric data. It's this ultra personalized performance platform like no other. And they have an app now too, which is really awesome. I definitely recommend it. They use a patented algorithm to analyze your body's data, provide you with a clear picture of what's going on inside you. Then they offer you science-backed recommendations for positive diet and lifestyle changes. Then they're going to give you a concrete action plan and track your progress towards reaching your goals every day and every step of the way. So you get yourself tested, you tell them a little bit about yourself, they'll give you an analysis and recommendations, you'll select a goal and customize the recommendations that work for you and your lifestyle, and then you'll track your progress. Over time, as I have been doing, you get to see which ones you're getting closer and closer to optimize, which things need work, and which things are at risk, so you can retest often to see what's working and what is not. They have this ultra personalized nutrition platform that's going to analyze from your blood, DNA, and fitness trackers to see what is going to help you to reach your goals. It is a really cool service. And friends, for a little bit longer, you get 25% off when you go to insidetracker.com/Tina. You will get 25% off. Don't hold back. As we are going into these winter months, we want to make sure that we are in a good place with our body. We all know that the winter months can be the toughest time on our body. So let's go into it knowing where we are at. You can go to insidetracker.com/Tina. I definitely can see that within your work, that there are plenty of examples where you can tell that you've done that extra effort and not taken the most obvious, simple example there that you could have. But I love that you say you're going to continue working on it, and you have been and will continue to do so. And yeah, that's just so refreshing to hear as someone who could easily coast it in and just, I am where I am, whatever to the haters. You can just deal with it. But that said, over the past 18 months, we've seen you practice what you've preached within your community. You've been pushing masking in your small bookstore in Texas. You pushed for vaccination, voter rights, getting Confederate monuments taken down. But with that, you've got to have faced a lot of criticism. And with that, along with book writing, with your podcast, being a dad, a husband, everything else, how do you handle all that? That's got to be a lot.
It's certainly a lot less than, people who have sort of real difficulties. So I don't think about that too much. To me, one of the things that I love about Stoicism is that it's a philosophy that does have and articulates really clearly what our obligations are to other people. So when I first came to Stoicism, I was interested in, sort of personal resiliency and productivity, sort of endurance and I was interested in, I don't want to say the superficial sides of it, but I was, as a younger, ambitious person, I was primarily interested in what it could do for me. But as I've read and studied it more, and I'm working now on this series of books about the cardinal virtues, courage being the first one, I am sort of trying and excited about exploring with the audience these other elements, and they're not minor elements. Marx really speaks of this idea of the common good, what our obligations are to other people, 80 times in meditations, almost more than any other concept. Mm-hmm. And so, for me, the idea that Stoicism is this sort of insular personal philosophy really misses what was actually a philosophy designed to make one active in the world. So, there's some criticism. It's upset some people. Have I lost some fans over it? Sure. But I've also gotten tons of nice emails and, the satisfaction of being able to use the platform to accomplish something in the world. Like, to me, that's much more meaningful.
And related to that, it's more meaningful, but the whole book goes into talking about what people are going to say about, you recognizing that speaking up for what you believe in, saying what you need to say is going to be worth it, even for the internal feeling. So you would say that everyone, or a lot of people, don't do things because they are scared of what will happen, what criticisms will come. But you are saying, as someone who has been very vocal about very polarizing topics, and you're still saying it is worth it, and kind of go for it, to anyone who's listening to this right now.
Yeah, I mean, I was frustrated, and I remain frustrated with the number of people that I know that have sort of huge platforms that they use to address like sort of relatively trivial issues, or that they sort of refuse to get involved because they don't want to piss their audience off. To me, like, what's the point of having the audience if you censor yourself in front of them? It sounds like the audience has you rather than the other way around.
So true. Okay, I want to bring running back into the conversation. Yes. So how do the concepts you talked about in the book, courage and fear in particular, relate to running? Now, I want to, before you answer, give you a quote that you said. When we imagine everything, when we catastrophize endlessly, that we are miserable and most afraid. When we focus on what we have to carry and do, we are too busy to worry, too busy working. I think that is going to apply to a lot of runners, in the sense that we do tend to get tangled up in what we've got to do. And you said you don't race, but I would love for you to speak to how courage and fear relate to running, whether people race or not.
Yeah, I mean, I think to me, running is you just do it. If you're overthinking it, if you're thinking about how hard it's going to be, if you're thinking about, well, what if this happens or this happens or this happens, that's usually your sort of weaker self trying to convince you not to do it, right? And so when I think about like running, or I think about any hard physical task, obviously a certain amount of preparation goes into it, and that's important. But to me, it's mostly about like just taking the leap.
Yeah. And do you think you would see it differently if you did enjoy racing at all? Do you think, is that any part of the reason that you haven't ever really chosen to race?
Like being afraid of it?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I ask that just because Malcolm talked about a paralyzing fear of racing that no speech, no other public thing he does brings in. So I was curious with your running, if that you thought deep down there was some element to that.
I mean, there might be. It's interesting to think about. I think it's more like understanding that I have a compulsion and turning a hobby or a thing that I get a lot of sort of no strings attached enjoyment out of, turning it into a thing. It's already measured in that, like, I see how long it took and I know how long it went, right? Now trying to see how I'm stacking up against other people. It's less a fear and more, I would like to categorize it as self-awareness, that knowing that that's a difficult thing for me to, that's not a healthy thing for me to add into my life if I don't have to have it. Like the Apple Watch, as I was saying, is enough of like, well, it says I have a 14-day, streak going. If I stop, then I lose the streak, right? Like I already have that. So for me, like the positive elements of competition are actually not bringing out, I guess what I'm saying is more competition isn't bringing out a better part of me. It may well be bringing out like a worse part of me.
How would you know that if you haven't done it?
Because I mean, I've run many races. I didn't always take them seriously, but I've run many races. So I know that I'm competitive. But what I'm saying is I'm already someone who is like comparing myself to others, trying to win, trying to get things done quick. Like I already have a lot of things that I'm competitive about, right? And so to me, just taking this, I guess it's like let's say you're really good at, let's say you really love painting. Like, and I talk about this in Stillness is the Key. Churchill develops this hobby of painting. To me, the decision to decide to show or sell your paintings is a transition from a hobby or a sort of an amateur for the love of it towards a more professionalized or competitive setting that I don't know if it brings in what it also takes out.
With running then, so do you think it's possible for people to be able to do races and be able to keep the approach that you have?
Oh, for sure. I just have found it's not for me. Like just knowing myself, like this is the best way to integrate like it into my life. And I liked your point about maybe when I'm older, I'll have a different relationship with the sport or the practice or whatever. But like right now, I just find I would, based on my experience with myself, I have a fair amount of it, that it would probably be a source of conflict and distress in my life as opposed to a place of relief or fun.
Yeah, this is very interesting to think about. I don't talk to many people. I don't know why, but I have very few friends who are the same age as me. Most people I'm around are quite a bit older or a few younger. But and so it is interesting talking to someone who is the same age, but also I've been at the obsessive 100 miles a week training, giving it everything I've got. And then I flipped back with my 2 kids to very much like whatever, like I'll do what I want to do. Like today I took a day off, even though I took a day off the day before yesterday, just because I had a sore throat and I thought I want to be safe with my body.
Yeah, sure.
But I am now, as I said to you, preparing to do a few races this fall, and I don't have expectations. I'm very much looking forward to it in a different way. And that's because I've done a lot of work on my relationship to running to where I can take days off. And so I feel like there's I'll be interested to see like some digging with you, because I feel like there's maybe, and you can obviously discount this, but like, I feel like there's going to be some interesting insights with you, just having done this journey myself over the last 5 years of untangling. Like you said about being very competitive, I was the same way. Like I'd be walking to the grocery store and I'd see someone out of the corner of my eye and I'm like, I'm going to get to the store before you. Very competitive with everything. But I actually feel a lot of peace now being able to have both, being able to run every day and knowing I'm committed, but also being able to jump in races or be able to take time off if I need.
Yeah, I mean, to me, one of the things that I work on with writing, as I've done each successive book, I've tried to make the process a little bit less miserable than the time before. And part of that is the same sort of drive that you're talking about, is that often when you really love something, you have such high expectations for it and for yourself that you can end up sucking all the fun out of it. And then you become very, very attached to the results.
Yeah.
Right. And I've tried to get to a place where I'm less attached to the results and more attached to the process, which to me, like it was like, if I'm not going to take the pleasure out of like how it did at the end, right? Like if that's not going to be the reward, then the day-to-dayness has to be less awful, right? Like what's the point of it sucking every day? Because it's hard, because it's not as good as you want, because you're hard on yourself, because this is a job and you take it seriously and there's no laughing matter or whatever. What's the point of it being like that if you're also then saying, well, I don't care how it does? So what you're really saying is that this is just an awful, fate you've been assigned, right? This is just like a miserable. So I've been trying then to think about like, oh, I'm actually going to enjoy it day to day. Like I'm going to enjoy writing today.
I love that. And I think that certainly applies to running too. And you probably wouldn't know this, but the reason I quit being an elite was because I reached that point where I was hating every moment and dreading the next one before I'd even finished the run I was on. So I certainly know how that can be the case with running too. Do you, a few more little fun things to know, have you convinced any of the other, big writing friends or friends in your friendship circle, I suppose the term is, to give running a try and got them hooked?
I don't think I've convinced anyone that wasn't already interested in running to run, but I do like finding out sort of what a little club it is. Like I saw Rich Roll not too long ago, and I love him. I was trying to be able to get a run in with Casey Neistat when I was in LA. That didn't happen. But yeah, I try. I like knowing that it's like sort of like a little secret thing that we're all doing. But I'm less of like an evangelist for it. I'm more, if I'm an evangelist for anything that I think is underrated, it's usually swimming. Because I've found that, like it's not most people's first idea of exercise. Or, some people just like sort of don't swim, but I found that swimming has been the thing that I'm like, you know what like really changed things for me, almost more than running.
Really?
Yeah.
Because of like what part of it?
Just like it's immersive. You're underwater. There's no screens usually. It's I don't know. I think there's something magical about it. It almost like returns you to like a womb-like state or something.
I could see that. Did you swim in high school or anything?
I actually swam in elementary school, and I also hated it. I hated like the getting up early. I hated the cold water, and I don't know what else I hated, but I love all those things now.
I did swimming for competitively as a like preteen, and I just can't bring myself to ever like it again. I just feel like I burned myself out, but maybe I should give it another try.
I think it's wonderful. It was, for whatever reason during the pandemic, I just haven't been able to do it as much as I liked, and I got to swim a couple times on this last trip, which I really really enjoyed and missed.
Mm-hmm. One more question I want to ask you that's totally off topic, but I really am curious to hear, and then I'll finish with one more fun running one. I've heard you talk about the Stoics you admire, especially heard you talk a lot about Marcus Aurelius being bold and brave with what he and others spoke up for in their time. Mm-hmm. I'm curious, has what happens in the last year made your relationship to these Stoics change or see them in a different light in any ways?
So of all the Stoics, the one that's got the closest tie to Stoicism is a guy named Chrysippus, who's the sort of the third major Stoic, who was actually a distance runner. He did this weird run. I'm forgetting what it's called, but it was this sort of ancient kind of version of wind sprints. They would run like a stadium length, touch the side, come back. Like they would do like 3 or 4 miles basically of these wind sprints.
Sounds like the beep test, right?
Yeah, exactly. But as like an Olympic sport, which I actually think would be fun to try sometime. But I think the Stoics have held up particularly well to me over the last year and a half because of what's happened in the world. Like I obviously I understood intellectually that Marcus Aurelius lived during the plague, but I guess it never really occurred to me what that would have been like. And I didn't, just so many of his quotes I assumed were sort of figurative, and then understanding that they were literal made me just helped me understand it from a different way. So, for instance, one of my favorite quotes, Marcus Aurelius says, there's 2 kinds of plagues. He's like, there's the one that destroys your life, and then there's the one that destroys your character. Now, obviously, I've read that many times, but it wasn't until, you watch people behave as they've behaved during the pandemic that you're like, oh, I see what you're saying. Yes, you can get COVID, or you can get infected with something worse than COVID, which is, whatever's making these people scream at, grocery store employees or take horse dewormer, whatever. You can get infected with a different kind of disease, a different virus that's actually worse because it makes you worse as a person. It might not have the same health concerns, but it's almost worse. And so I think the Stoics have held up really well over the last year and I think they tend to do that in adversity because that's what it was really built around.
Yeah. So related to what you just said there, when I was reading your book, again, I'll say the name, Courage is Calling, Fortune Favors the Brave. I thought about what you just said there about kind of the misinformation, the movements that are happening based on misinformation. What about people who say, well, I'm being brave, and they genuinely believe they're doing exactly what you're saying, but they are essentially harming others? Like you said, fighting mask mandates, refusing vaccinations. Like, what are your thoughts there when they think they are being courageous by speaking up and, essentially don't know any better because of what social media or other sources of information are telling them?
Yeah, there's a great quote from Lord Byron. He says, the cause makes all that degrades and hallows fortune, that degrades or hallows courage in its fall. And it's true, right? The school teacher that resists pressure from the government, the district, from parents and loses their job over it, because they won't get vaccinated, I guess is expressing courage in the very narrow sense. But courage isn't, a parlor trick. It's not just like, how long can you do something? How much can you endure? It's are you pursuing justice? It's are you pursuing things that make the world better? So if your courage is to defy pressure to protect your own health, and then protect the health of your community, I mean, I guess you can call that courage, but I'd call it something different. So this is also, of course, though, as you said, where something like wisdom comes in, because, most of these people are not doing it out of maliciousness, but they're doing it out of being profoundly misinformed or, sort of not intelligence. And so it's a struggle. This is why it's really difficult to separate any of the virtues.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for, that was something I had been thinking about as I was reading this, that a lot of people probably think, well, I'm doing exactly that. I am standing up, but yeah, like you said, it's still putting themselves ahead of everyone else. And, you deal with you, I'm going to deal with me, and we'll just stay that way, which we know is not the answer to things. It is working together as a community. Now,
I would add to that. It's probably ironic if you really got to the core of it. It's probably also rooted in fear, right? You're like, why won't you take the virus? Well, I'm afraid of what might happen, right? Or I don't like needles, right? And so the irony is that this thing that's supposedly based in courage is at the end of the day just sort of not wanting to do something that you're unsure about. I'm not saying there's risks, but I certainly, anything that's not 100% certain, we can feel that little bit of flutter of fear, but you gotta do it anyway.
So true. Thank you. Final question. We said Ryan is going to make it past 60 years old with his knees still intact. What do you hope 70-year-old Ryan is doing with his running?
I don't know. I'd love to still be running. Probably won't be as fast. I definitely hope to still be walking. And if all else fails, I guess swimming is still a possibility. I see a lot of really old swimmers every time I go to the pool, which does give me hope.
I know, it is adorable to see. I love seeing people at the pool who go every day at the same time, and they're just very committed and they all know each other. It's awesome. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for joining me today. I will put lots of links in the show notes for people to go find you and for people to go get a copy of Courage is Calling, Fortune Favors the Brave. Anything else you want to tell the listeners?
No, thank you. It was awesome. And I can't wait to run someday.
Before we end this episode, I just want to take a moment to shout out my podcast editor, Jeremy Nessel, who has done such a wonderful job of looking after my podcast, taking out all the mishaps in the episodes, while still keeping in the vulnerability and the realness and the rawness of the conversation. This is not one of those podcasts where I take out the ums and the ers and the sometimes the delay in words, because I think it's very important to keep that authenticity. We're surrounded by perfected and manicured everything, and I think it's really important that Running for Real stays that way. So thank you to Jeremy for your work. I also want to thank Maria Vargas and Amber Moore, who are also part of my team. They've been a big part of this community and me being able to build this brand. So just want to give them a shout out too. All right, let's get right back to the end of this episode. Thank you to Ryan for joining me for this episode today. And thank you to you for listening. I know you have plenty of other options that you could have chosen from to listen to as a podcast. Our time is all limited, but you are here. So thank you. And I appreciate you. It's always fun to take a deep dive with someone who is very intellectual, who's really smart and thoughtful and just into growth, but also loves to geek out about running. And that was really fun to do that again today. I will put lots of links in the show notes to go check out Ryan's stuff, so be sure to go check that out. You can find it at runningforreal.com/episode 268. You can also find information to our sponsors of this episode, which are Tracksmith. Thank you to Tracksmith for sponsoring this episode. You can get $15 off your order of $75 or more by using code TINA15 at checkout. Now remember, that code is running out. This is one of your last few days to check it out. It's going to be removed soon, and we're going to replace it with a giving code. So if you've been holding off, that $15 off, 75 or more is going to be gone. Go to tracksmith.com and use code TINA15. I want to thank UCAN for sponsoring this episode. I will be using UCAN in all of my races this fall as my primary fuel source. And you can go to UCAN, that's ucan.co, that's .co, ucan.co/Tina to go get yourself 20% off your order. You can go check out some of my favorites there as well. And finally, to Inside Tracker. Thank you to Inside Tracker for keeping me healthy. I have just had another test myself, and I'm waiting for the results to see what it finds about how my insides are doing. And if you want to go check out how you are doing, look at your blood work, you can go to insidetracker.com/Tina to get 25% off. Thank you so much for listening, my friends. I will see you on Monday for another Together Run and next Friday for another regular episode.